instead of a mood ring. And slowly, without some big dramatic turning point, you realize you're not stressed the same way anymore. Not because the number changed overnight, because your relationship with the number changed. So what happens when you finally take money seriously? You stop confusing avoidance with peace. You stop mistaking a bigger paycheck for a solved problem. You start making small, unglamorous decisions on a schedule instead of big emotional ones in a panic. And somewhere in the middle of all that boring consistency, the anxiety that used to live in your chest every time you opened your banking app, it just quietly...
Money doesn't respond to how much you have. It responds to how much attention you're actually paying it. And most of us, myself included, spend years being financially present without ever being financially serious.
Treat your future self like someone you actually respect. You didn't just take money seriously. You became the kind of person money starts taking seriously back. What if I told you that taking money seriously has almost nothing to do with how much you make? Stick with me here, because I used to think the opposite. I used to think the moment my paycheck got bigger, everything else would just fall into place. Spoiler, it didn't. And if you've ever gotten a raise and somehow still felt broke 2 weeks later, you already know exactly what I'm talking about. Here's the thing nobody tells you. Money doesn't respond to how much you have. It responds to how much attention you're actually paying it. And most of us, myself included, spend years being financially present without ever being financially serious. We check the balance, we panic a little, we close the app. That's not seriousness. That's just anxiety wearing a calculator. So what does it actually look like when you finally flip the switch? Let me walk you through it, because it happens in stages, and almost nobody talks about the early ones because they're not glamorous. Stage 1 is uncomfortable. It's the moment you actually open every account you've been avoiding, not glancing at the balance, actually reading the statements, actually adding up the subscriptions you forgot you had. I did this once at 1 a.m. with a coffee that had gone cold an hour earlier, and I remember feeling something close to nausea. Not because the numbers were catastrophic, because I realized how long I'd been guessing instead of knowing. And guessing feels safer. Knowing feels like responsibility. That's why most people stay in stage 0 forever, comfortable ignorance dressed up as, I'll deal with it later. Stage 2 is where it gets weird, because once you know the real numbers, you can't unknow them. You start noticing money everywhere. The $5 here, the subscription you forgot to cancel, the delivery fee that's basically a tax on convenience. It's not that you're suddenly cheap, it's that you're finally paying attention, and attention is expensive to ignore once you've had it. Here's where a lot of people go wrong though. They think taking money seriously means restriction. Cut everything. Suffer now, live later. And look, I get the appeal. It feels productive, but it's not sustainable. And honestly, it's not even the point. The point isn't to stop spending. The point is to stop spending on autopilot. So what actually works? 3 things. Just 3. Not 50 tips, not a 12-step system you'll abandon by Thursday. First, you separate knowing from feeling. You check your numbers on a schedule, not on a mood. Once a week, same day, same time. Not when you're anxious, not when you're celebrating, just on schedule. Because financial decisions made from panic or excitement are almost always decisions you regret by Tuesday. Second, you give every dollar a job before it arrives, not after. This sounds small, but it changes everything. Most people budget the money they already spent, which isn't budgeting. That's just an autopsy. Assigning the job in advance means you're not negotiating with yourself in the moment, which, let's be honest, you will lose. We all lose that argument at 11 p.m. with a shopping cart open. Third, and this one's uncomfortable, you start treating your future self like an actual person you're responsible for, not an abstract idea. A real person who's going to inherit whatever decisions you make this week. I used to think future me was someone else's problem. Turns out, future me was extremely unhappy with past me, and past me never even apologized. And here's the part that surprises people the most. None of this requires more money. It requires more honesty. I've seen people making 6 figures who are more financially unserious than people making a fraction of that, simply because the second group actually looks. That's the whole game, looking consistently, even when it's boring, especially when it's boring. Because here's the truth about taking money seriously. It's mostly boring. It's not a movie montage. It's not a dramatic turnaround. It's Tuesday afternoons spent checking a spreadsheet you'd rather ignore. It's saying no to something small, repeatedly, until it stops feeling like sacrifice and starts feeling like identity. That's the shift. That's the actual moment things change. Not when the numbers get bigger, but when the behavior gets quieter and more consistent. I still mess this up sometimes. I'll have a good month and get a little loose with it, and then I catch myself a week later wondering where it all went. The difference now isn't that I never slip, it's that I notice faster. That's what seriousness actually buys you. Not perfection, just a shorter distance between the mistake and the correction. And that's the part nobody tells you about the identity shift. You don't wake up one day suddenly good with money. You just start being the kind of